The champagne was still cold in my hand when my phone rang, shattering what should have been the most peaceful moment of my life. My son's voice dripped with the kind of entitlement that comes from never having worked a day for anything. 24 hours later, I was standing in my own foyer, watching a parade of strangers track sand across my Italian marble floors like they owned the place. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Let me back up to how this delicious mess started. 3 months ago, I sold Sterling & Coder Media, the company I'd built from nothing over 30 years. The buyers paid $2.8 million cash, and after taxes, I had enough to do exactly what I wanted: buy my dream beach house and disappear from the corporate rat race forever. The house was everything I'd fantasized about during those brutal 18-hour workdays. 6,000 square feet of weathered cedar and glass perched along Tybee Island, Georgia, with panoramic ocean views and enough space to host my entire extended family for the holidays I'd been too busy to enjoy for decades. I'd been there exactly 8 hours when Darius called. No, congratulations on your retirement, Ma. No, the house looks amazing. Just straight to business. Ma, we need you to move to the guest room upstairs. Kenya's entire family is flying in tomorrow for a 2-week vacation. Her parents, her sister's family, her brother and his girlfriend. That's 11 people total. I actually laughed. Darius, baby, this is my house. If you all want to vacation here, we can work out some dates. No, you don't understand, he said, tone clipped. We already booked their flights. They're expecting to stay in the primary suite and the main bedrooms. The guest room has a perfectly good ocean view. You'll be fine up there. The casual assumption that I'd just comply left me momentarily speechless. This was the same son I'd put through business school, whose failed restaurant I'd bailed out twice, whose mortgage I'd helped with when his design company nearly folded. Darius, I said evenly, I bought this house to relax and enjoy my retirement. I'm not running a hotel for Kenya's family. His voice turned cold in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of his father during our divorce negotiations. Look, Ma, you've got this huge house all to yourself. It's selfish not to share. And if you don't want to be reasonable about it, well, I heard there's a very nice assisted living facility just down the coastal highway. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. My 35-year-old son was essentially telling me to accommodate his in-laws or face abandonment, again. I see, I said quietly. And what if I refuse? Then I guess we'll have to reconsider how much help you actually need at your age. Living alone in such a big house, managing all that space. Maybe it's too much responsibility for someone in their mid-60s. After I hung up, I sat on my new deck watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of amber and gold. The beauty should have been healing, but all I could think about was the satisfied smugness in Darius's voice. He thought he'd cornered me, thought I was just another helpless older woman who'd caved to emotional blackmail. What? Darius didn't know what I'd learned in 30 years of business was that the best victories come from letting your opponent think they've already. When a Saturday came earlier than expected, at exactly 6:47 a.m., Loretta Sterling was yanked out of her first peaceful sleep in months by the sound of tires grinding up her driveway. She slid open her bedroom curtains and froze. 3 SUVs, all packed to the roof with luggage, coolers, and beach gear, rolled in like a convoy. Doors flew open. Voices filled the morning air. Children shrieked. A heavy woman in a floral dress, Patrice Rivers, Kenya's mother, stepped out and immediately started giving orders like a drill sergeant. Kenya, bring those bags in the main room. Andre, go on and find the kitchen. Rochelle, where's that grocery list I gave you? I want my coffee before I sweat. Loretta just stood there, barefoot in her satin robe, gripping her curtain like a shield. Not one person looked up toward the window. Not one rang the bell. They just marched into her house, like they owned it. By the time she made it downstairs, the foyer was a battlefield of half-unpacked suitcases and scattered flip-flops. Darius was leaning against the counter, smiling like a man who'd done something generous. Morning, Ma. You're up early. I didn't have a choice, Loretta said coolly. The invasion started at dawn. He laughed, missing the sting. Everybody was excited. I figured you wouldn't mind. Patrice looked up from rearranging Loretta's pantry. Oh, Loretta, honey, you don't mind us moving a few things, do you? I like my coffee beans and spices in reach. Loretta's lips pressed together. Help yourself. By 8:30 a.m., chaos had a rhythm. Someone was frying bacon, kids were chasing each other through the halls, and Keon was arguing with his girlfriend Tasha about who would get the ocean view room. Kenya was walking around in yoga pants, filming a tour on her phone. This place is perfect, she cooed to her followers. My husband's mom really hooked us up. 5 bedrooms, oceanfront view, infinity pool. Y'all know we living soft this summer. Loretta closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. That evening, she found herself washing dishes while the guests lounged on her deck, playing music too loud and talking about business deals they planned to host there. Darius, she called, drying her hands. Can we talk? He looked annoyed but followed her to the hallway. Baby, this isn't going to work, she said evenly. There are 11 people here. I didn't agree to this. Ma, relax. It's temporary. Kenya's families never had a real beach vacation. They'll only stay a few weeks. A few weeks? She repeated. Yeah. And listen, Kenya had a great idea. Since you're retired, maybe you can help with the meals and logistics. You're good at organizing. Loretta stared at him. Meals and logistics? He grinned, missing the danger entirely. Yeah, you love hosting. It'll keep you busy. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Darius Sterling, I am not the house staff. Come on. Ma, don't make it a thing. But it was a thing. That night, after everyone went to bed, Loretta sat alone on her porch, looking out at the moonlit waves. Her home, her sanctuary, had turned into a boarding house overnight. But she didn't cry. She didn't even curse. She just smiled faintly and whispered, All right, Lord, you sent me a test. Let's see who fails it first. Then she picked up her phone and began making notes, lists, names, and phone numbers. Property managers, attorneys, a local accountant she trusted. The next morning, the war for her peace continued. Patrice complained about the air conditioning. Rochelle wanted to repaint the guest room, something brighter. Keon borrowed her car without asking. The refrigerator was already half empty. By noon, Loretta had stopped trying to intervene. She let them have their show. But every time one of them crossed another line, she took a silent note. The teacher in her, the strategist, was wide awake now. And when she smiled that quiet smile over her morning coffee, no one noticed that the woman they were walking over was already 3 moves ahead. Because Loretta Sterling didn't fight chaos with shouting. She fought it with plans. And by the time her so-called family realized what was coming, it would already be far too late. By the 3rd day, Loretta's beach house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a resort under hostile management. Patrice had claimed the master suite because of her back. Kenya and Darius took the ocean view room. Rochelle and Andre took over the media room for their teenage boys. And Keon and Tasha had turned the study into what looked suspiciously like a crash pad. Loretta's once perfect sanctuary now echoed with laughter, arguments, and the constant whir of blenders. The kitchen had become enemy territory. Loretta couldn't so much as brew coffee without bumping into someone frying catfish or loading her dishwasher wrong. Loretta? Sweetie, we're out of almond milk, Patrice called from the fridge, frowning as if the oversight were a personal offense. Loretta raised an eyebrow. Then I guess we'll all survive on regular milk today. Patrice clucked her tongue. Oh no, I can't drink that. Kenya, be a dear and add it to the list for your mother. Loretta turned around. What list? Kenya smiled, holding up a pink notepad. Just a few household things we ran out of. Groceries, paper towels, extra towels for the pool, more wine, oh, and sunscreen for Mom. Loretta looked down at the list. There were 27 items on it. She took a long breath, folded the note neatly, and set it on the counter. I'll keep that in mind, she said evenly, and walked out before her mouth said something her soul couldn't take back. That afternoon, the vacation evolved into a full-blown family project. Darius was setting up a Bluetooth speaker system for ambiance. Rochelle's boys were cannonballing into the pool. Keon had commandeered her garage to set up a mini gym, and Kenya was on FaceTime giving a house tour to her influencer friends. "Baby, show them the ocean view?" She giggled. "Yes, my mother-in-law's place is giving luxury retreat vibes. It's perfect for the brunch I'm planning. 30 people at least." Loretta froze mid-step. 30? Kenya grinned. "Oh, yes. Darius invited some folks from work, and my mom's church group wants to come through. We'll do seafood, drinks, maybe some live music. Just something classy and fun." Loretta blinked. "You're throwing a party? Here?" Darius walked in just in time to add, "It'll be great networking for me, too. A lot of my clients are down this way. You don't mind, right, Ma?" She smiled. That slow, disarming, dangerous smile that meant her silence was worth more than any argument. "Of course not," she said sweetly. "But you might want to check with the property management company first," Kenya frowned. "Property management?" Loretta shrugged lightly. "Just a little paperwork. Don't worry about it." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Loretta sat in her upstairs guest room, her so-called temporary space, and opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard like she was back in her executive days. First, she called Jamal Brooks, her accountant. "Loretta, retired life treating you good?" he teased. She smiled thinly. "Let's just say I'm thinking about turning my house into a business asset." Then she called Aisha Carter, an attorney she'd worked with years ago. "Aisha, darling, I need to set up an LLC, quietly, the kind that shields assets and keeps ownership discreet." Aisha chuckled. "I know that tone. Who's in trouble?" "Not me," Loretta said calmly. "Just a few uninvited guests." Over the next 2 days, she moved with quiet precision. She collected receipts for every grocery run, every delivery, every expense that wasn't hers. She photographed the state of the property: furniture out of place, scuffs on the floors, smudges on her marble counters. She documented everything. Meanwhile, the house grew louder. Patrice began issuing commands like a general. "Loretta, we need fresh linens in the pool room." "Loretta, the grill's out of propane." "Loretta, could you run to town for more seafood?" Each time, Loretta responded with the same soft smile and gentle nod. She'd learned long ago that the most dangerous person in any war is the one who doesn't raise their voice. By the end of the week, she had quietly set everything in motion: legal structure, management contracts, property insurance updates, all done in her name, all without a single argument. On Sunday morning, Darius approached her on the porch, looking slightly nervous. "Hey, Ma, Kenya's family's really enjoying themselves. I think it's good for everyone to be together. Brings us closer." Loretta looked out at the ocean, its surface rippling in sunlight. She said softly. "Family togetherness. What a blessing," he smiled, relieved. "Glad you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she said. Then, after a pause, she added with a serene tone, "Make sure everyone enjoys this week, baby. It might be their last one here." Darius frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Loretta stood, brushing off her linen slacks. "Oh, nothing serious, sweetheart. I just have a feeling change is coming." And as she walked back inside, her bare feet silent on the wood floors, she smiled to herself. Because the house wasn't a prison anymore. It was a chessboard, and Loretta Sterling had just moved her queen. By the following weekend, Loretta's once serene beach home had been transformed into what looked and sounded like a festival ground. The simple family gathering had ballooned into a full-blown networking party. Cars lined the driveway. The smell of grilled shrimp and jerk chicken filled the air, and laughter drifted across the deck where music thumped loud enough to make the waves seem shy. Loretta sat in the shade of her porch, watching her house operate like a luxury event venue without her consent. Darius stood near the pool, laughing too loud, shaking hands with men in polo shirts. Kenya and her influencer friends were doing slow-motion videos by the water, their drinks raised for the camera. Patrice Rivers, the self-appointed matriarch of the occasion, was giving a speech about family legacy to anyone polite enough not to walk away. Loretta had seen it all before. Different faces, same arrogance. She knew what came next. someone would claim credit for her hard work. Someone would try to take what she'd built. "Loretta," Patrice called, waving her hand. "Be a dear and bring out that big platter from the kitchen." "The one with the gold trim." Loretta smiled politely and rose, moving through the crowd of strangers like a ghost in her own home. As she reached the kitchen, she overheard Kenya's voice. "See, this is why having property in the family is so important. When Ma Loretta eventually can't manage all this, Darius will take over, and we'll make it a family business. Events, rentals, content shoots, all of it." Loretta froze. The audacity rolled through her veins like fire. "Eventually can't manage," she repeated under her breath, the words sharp as broken glass. Back on the porch, Darius was in his element. "My mom's been letting me handle the logistics," he bragged. "I'll probably take over management full-time soon. Gotta make sure it's profitable, right?" The group nodded approvingly. Loretta smiled from the doorway, her gold-trimmed platter gleaming in the sunlight. She placed it gently on the table, her every movement slow and deliberate. "Oh, Darius," she said sweetly. "I didn't realize you'd taken over the house. Maybe I should send the bills to you from now on." The laughter that followed was nervous. Darius chuckled awkwardly. "Come on, Ma, I'm just talking about business," she finished for him. "Yes, I heard. Family business," Patrice interjected quickly. "We're just proud of how you raised such an ambitious man, Loretta." Loretta nodded. "Ambition is good, as long as it's built on respect." Patrice laughed too loudly. Of course, of course." By the time sunset brushed the water in orange and violet, Loretta had slipped quietly into the background. Her guests didn't notice her phone calls, the one to Janice Morgan, the local real estate agent she'd met the day before. The one to Aisha Carter, confirming the LLC paperwork had been filed. Or the final one to David Cole, the property management director in Savannah. "David," she said softly, her voice calm but firm, "I'd like you to prepare the property for high-end rental management, discreetly. The paperwork's under Sterling Retreats LLC. "Of course, Mrs. Sterling," David replied. "When should we begin?" "Immediately," she said. "And send me a sample listing, something professional. I want it to look like the sale already went through." The next morning, Darius and Kenya stumbled into the kitchen, nursing hangovers. "Mom, last night was amazing." Darius grinned. "We made so many good connections. Everyone loved the house." Loretta poured herself coffee. "I'm glad," she said smoothly. "Because you'll need those connections when the catering bill comes," he frowned. "The what?" "The catering," she said, gesturing to the empty trays and wine bottles. "The company you hired through your friend's referral. Since you told them you were managing the property, the invoice will be addressed to you. It's $15,000, give or take." Kenya's eyes widened. "15,000?" Loretta sipped her coffee, serene. "Quality costs money, darling." Darius's smile faltered. "You're joking." "I rarely joke about money," she replied, her eyes steady on his. Later that afternoon, she stood on the balcony overlooking the ocean. The sun was sinking low, gilding the water in amber. Below her, the remnants of the party littered the sand. Her once perfect home looked exhausted like she felt, but her heart was calm. Because while her son and his entourage were still bragging, still unaware, the papers were already signed. The property was under a new name, her bank account was protected, and the management company would take control within days. Loretta turned toward the sea and whispered, "Let them play house a little longer. Their eviction notice is already in motion." And when the first ocean breeze brushed her cheek, she smiled, soft, certain, unstoppable, because they thought they'd used her. But Loretta Sterling was about to teach every last one of them that the most dangerous thing in the world is a woman who's done being polite. It all began the following morning when Loretta woke to silence, a rare luxury, in what had recently felt like a madhouse. The kitchen was empty, the patio deserted, and for the first time in 2 weeks, she could hear the ocean instead of complaints. The calm didn't last long. At 9:15 a.m., Darius appeared, phone in hand, looking uneasy. "Ma," he said carefully, "we got a small issue." Loretta raised an eyebrow. "Just one?" "The catering company's calling about the event." They say the bill's past due. Oh? She folded her arms. And who authorized catering? Kenya's cousin referred them. But they said you were the homeowner, so they assumed you'd handle payment. Loretta gave a quiet laugh. Oh no, sweetheart. You told everyone you were managing the property, remember? That makes you the responsible party. Congratulations! You're officially in charge. He blinked, unsure whether she was joking. The total, she continued, is $15,000. Due immediately. 15. Ma, they're mistaken. He sputtered. Then you should clear it up, she said smoothly, handing him her cordless phone. By lunchtime, the tension in the house was thick enough to slice. Patrice was on the porch, fanning herself dramatically. Kenya and Rochelle were arguing over who'd scratched the hardwood floors. Andre was packing, muttering something about ungrateful hosts. When Loretta walked into the living room, she found Darius pacing, phone pressed to his ear. No, I told you my mother owns the property, but what do you mean legally transferred? He turned toward her, eyes wide. Ma, what's this about you selling the house? She smiled faintly. Oh, that. I forgot to mention. I made some changes. What kind of changes? Kenya snapped. The kind that guarantee peace and quiet. Loretta crossed the room and placed a folder on the table. Inside were the official documents transferring the property to Sterling Retreats, LLC, with management handled by a professional firm in Savannah. The new owners, she explained, take possession next week. Wonderful people. They plan to rent it to respectful guests who appreciate tranquility. Darius's mouth fell open. You sold it? Patrice's face flushed red. You can't just sell a family home. No, dear, Loretta said, closing the folder with a soft snap. It was my retirement home. The one your son said I was too old to manage. The one you've all been treating like a timeshare. Kenya shook her head in disbelief. You can't just— Oh, I can, Loretta interrupted gently. And I did. The silence that followed was electric. Then Darius tried one last tactic. Maybe we can work something out. Split the house time. Shared expenses. Loretta actually laughed. Shared expenses? You mean like the catering bill you can't afford? Or the grocery deliveries I paid for? Or the utilities that tripled when 11 people moved in? He straightened his shoulders, defensive. You're going to regret this, Ma. You think you can live out here all alone? What happens when you fall? When you can't manage things? You're going to need family, and we won't be there. Loretta smiled, a quiet, lethal kind of smile. You're absolutely right, she said softly. I can't manage this house alone. That's why I sold it. The words hit like a thunderclap. Darius's jaw dropped. Kenya froze mid-step. Patrice stammered, but we have plans. Had plans, Loretta corrected calmly. The movers arrive tomorrow. The property managers take over in a week. Patrice's voice rose. You're throwing your own family out. Loretta looked her dead in the eye. No, I'm reclaiming my home. The argument that followed was short, vicious, and entirely predictable. Accusations flew, doors slammed, and the word lawyer was tossed around like confetti. Loretta didn't flinch. She simply watched them pack their chaos into cars and drive away. As the last vehicle disappeared down the winding road, the wind shifted. The air smelled clean again, salt and jasmine, not sunscreen and cheap liquor. Her phone rang. Mrs. Sterling, said a cheerful voice. This is David Cole from Savannah Coastal Management. Just confirming that your property is ready for its first guests. They arrive tomorrow for a 2-week stay. Loretta smiled, stepping out onto her porch as the evening sun gilded the waves. Yes, Mr. Cole, she said softly. Everything's ready, he chuckled. You sound pleased. I am, she replied. Because the best revenge isn't loud, it's profitable. As she ended the call, the house hummed quietly behind her, empty but alive again. She turned to the horizon, whispering to herself, They thought they took advantage of me, but they just funded my next chapter. And with that, Loretta Sterling closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Finally, at peace. For a few blissful hours after the convoy disappeared, Loretta basked in the sound of peace. The rhythmic hush of the waves returned. The house smelled like ocean air instead of body spray and fried food. The floors gleamed again, where she'd mopped away footprints that had no respect for her space. She sat on her porch with a glass of sweet tea, letting the sun dip lower over Tybee Island. Then, as if summoned by karma itself, her phone buzzed. It was Darius. She almost didn't answer, but she did, just to see what flavor of foolishness awaited her. "Mama," he started, already defensive. "We didn't deserve that. You blindsided us." "I think you mean I surprised you," she said evenly, "which you'll recall was the theme of your little vacation." "Mama, be serious." "Kenya's family's upset. You humiliated them." Loretta gave a small laugh. "Oh, they managed that all by themselves. You can't just kick your own family out. People are talking, let them talk," she said. "At least now they'll be talking about my success, not your entitlement." There was a pause. Then the voice on the other end hardened. "You'll regret this, Mama. You can't do all this by yourself. You're almost 65. You'll need family eventually." Loretta smiled at the horizon, the sunset painting gold streaks across the sea. "If you were really family, I'd already have you." He hung up. By dusk, she'd received 3 more calls, one from Kenya, furious, one from Patrice, offended, and one from Rochelle, pretending to be the peacemaker. Loretta ignored them all. Instead, she called Aisha Carter, her lawyer. "Aisha, dear," she said calmly, "I'd like to finalize the management agreement. The guests arrive tomorrow." "Everything's set," Aisha assured her. "The LLC paperwork is airtight. They can shout, but they can't touch a dime of it." "Perfect," Loretta replied, taking a long sip of her tea. "Then let them shout." That night, as she walked through the empty halls, she could almost hear the echoes of the chaos that had consumed her home. The slamming doors, the laughter that never included her, the insults dressed as concern. She paused in the master suite, her fingers grazing the smooth edge of the dresser that had once held Patrice's clutter. "Back where you belong," she whispered. Then she lit a lavender candle, climbed into her bed, and slept without interruption for the first time in weeks. The next morning, the world was already moving on without her family's drama. David Cole from the property management company arrived with his clipboard and friendly smile. "Everything looks immaculate," he said. "We'll handle check-ins, maintenance, and guest relations. You'll just receive deposits and reports." Loretta grinned. Music to my ears. By noon, the Parker family, her first renters, arrived. A quiet, respectful couple with 2 polite teenage daughters. They knocked before entering. They brought a small welcome gift, a jar of local honey. "Mrs. Sterling," Mrs. Parker said gently, "we hope we're not imposing." "Not at all," Loretta replied, smiling. "Make yourselves at home. You'll find this place runs best when people respect it." The family settled in, grateful and soft-spoken. Their laughter was gentle, their presence easy. The house felt alive again, not invaded, but appreciated. That evening, Loretta sat with her feet up, reviewing the first rental payment confirmation, $8,000 for 2 weeks, booked solid through the summer. "Peace and profit," she murmured, raising her glass to no one in particular. Now that's a combination I can live with. But the Sterling family storm was far from over. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived by courier. Inside was a formal notice from a law firm. Notice of intent to dispute property transfer. Loretta smirked, reading it slowly, almost admiring the desperation. "Of course," she said under her breath. "Let the next game begin." She set the papers down and walked to the porch. The ocean breeze met her face, warm and sure. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of being alone. She wasn't lonely. She was free. And as the sun slipped behind the horizon, she whispered to herself, "Let them come. This time I'll be ready, and I'll win on my own terms." 2 days after reclaiming her peace, Loretta's world had finally slowed to a rhythm that felt like living again. No shouting, no uninvited hands opening her refrigerator, no loud television shaking the walls. Only the whisper of the ocean through open windows and the low hum of her coffee maker. The knock at the door was soft, polite, almost hesitant. On her porch stood a family of 4, the Parkers from Richmond. A husband, a wife, and 2 teenage daughters. They smiled shyly, each of them holding something: a casserole dish, a vase of flowers, and a small welcome card. "Mrs. Sterling?" The wife said carefully. "We're the first renters from the management company. I just wanted to make sure we weren't too early." Loretta smiled warmly. "You're right on time. Come on in. And please, call me Loretta." From the moment they entered, she could feel the difference: their energy, their tone, the sheer respect in the way they moved through her home. The girls removed their sandals without being asked. The parents spoke in soft voices. "We really appreciate this," Mrs. Parker said. "It's beautiful here. We'll take great care of it." "I'm sure you will," Loretta replied, smiling. "Please treat the house like your own. That's what you're paying for." What they didn't need to know was that she had never left. The apartment above the garage mentioned in the management paperwork didn't exist. Loretta had simply moved back into her master suite the moment Darius and his chaos disappeared. That evening, as the Parkers unpacked and laughter drifted faintly from the deck, Loretta sat by the window, her laptop open to her booking dashboard. Her eyes widened as she scrolled. The property was fully booked through the summer season. $8,000 every 2 weeks, plus cleaning fees and security deposits? $8,000 for peace and quiet, she murmured, almost laughing. Now that's therapy I can afford. She'd turned the very weapon Darius used against her, her house, her independence, into her greatest advantage. But peace never stays unchallenged for long. The following morning, the doorbell rang again. Loretta peered through the peephole and immediately recognized the type: a woman in a dark gray suit, expensive heels, and the faint aura of entitlement that only comes from billable hours. When Loretta opened the door, the woman smiled with rehearsed politeness. "Mrs. Sterling? I'm Rebecca Walsh, representing your son, Darius Sterling, in a property dispute matter." "Of course." Loretta stepped aside. "Well, come in, Ms. Walsh. I was wondering when he'd get around to this." The lawyer adjusted her folder and cleared her throat. "My client believes there may have been irregularities in the recent property transfer. Specifically that you may have been unduly influenced, or that your mental capacity—" Loretta's laugh cut her off. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. "Let me stop you right there, Ms. Walsh. I may be retired, but my mind is sharper than your client's credit score." Rebecca blinked. "Excuse me?" "I know every cent I've earned, every document I've signed, and every person I've cut out of my will. If your client's strategy is to question my capacity, he'll need more than nerve. He'll need proof." The lawyer hesitated, clearly thrown off by Loretta's calm confidence. "We'll be in touch. I'm counting on it," Loretta said, escorting her to the door. After the woman left, Loretta stood alone for a long moment, watching the horizon. Her son had crossed a new line, the kind that turned disappointment into betrayal. But if Darius thought he could weaponize the law, he was about to learn that his mother had played that game longer and better than he ever could. That evening, the Parkers invited her to join them for dinner. It was the first time in weeks that laughter around her dining table didn't sting. "Mrs. Sterling," Mr. Parker said between bites of grilled fish, "you must love living here year-round." "It's paradise," she smiled faintly. "It is now." And for the first time in a long time, she truly meant it. But even as she enjoyed their company, Loretta's mind was already turning over her next move, one that would make sure no one, not even her own blood, would ever threaten her peace again. She took another sip of wine and smiled into the glass. The tide had turned, and this time, it was in her favor. For nearly a week, Loretta's new life flowed like the tide, steady, calm, restorative. The Parkers were model tenants. They watered her plants, left small thank you notes, and even invited her to join them for morning walks along the shoreline. For the first time in years, Loretta Sterling felt seen and respected, not used or managed. But that peace shattered one Friday morning when she opened her front gate to find a black SUV parked at the curb. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Kenya's perfectly made-up face and Darius's stiff posture behind the wheel. "Mama," he called, voice dripping with forced patience. "We just want to talk." "No, you want to manipulate," Loretta murmured under her breath. But she opened the gate anyway, not out of weakness, but to end this circus once and for all. Kenya stepped out first, clutching her phone like a weapon. "Mama Sterling, this is ridiculous. Darius didn't mean for things to go this far. You didn't have to sell the house." Loretta folded her arms. "I didn't sell the house. I restructured ownership. Legally, efficiently, permanently." Kenya's fake smile flickered. "You can't just—" "I can," Loretta interrupted coolly. "And I did. Now, unless you're here to apologize, I suggest you leave before my guests see this drama." That's when Darius pulled out his phone. "You're making a mistake, Ma. The lawyer said if you won't cooperate, we'll have to get a competency evaluation. You can't just move assets around without oversight at your age." The world seemed to freeze. Loretta's face didn't change, not a flicker, but something sharp and ancient glinted behind her eyes. "So that's the play?" she said quietly. "You're really going to try and have your mother declared incompetent to get your hands on her house?" Darius shifted uneasily. "It's not like that. We just want to make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" she snapped. "Independence, peace, or the fact that I stopped funding your life?" The conversation ended there. Kenya muttered something about family betrayal. Darius slammed the car door and the SUV sped off, kicking sand and humiliation into the air. Loretta didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply picked up her phone and called her attorney. "Aisha," she said calmly, "my son's just threatened to have me evaluated. File a protective order if he tries to contact me again. And while you're at it, draft a cease and desist for harassment." "I'm on it," Aisha replied immediately. "Do you want me to notify APS in advance, just in case?" Loretta hesitated. "No," she said finally. "Let them come if they're going to. I have nothing to hide." 2 weeks later, they did. It was a Tuesday morning when a white sedan pulled up and a woman in a navy blazer stepped out. She introduced herself as Janine Thomas from Adult Protective Services. Her tone was polite but firm. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, clipboard in hand, "we received a concern regarding your well-being and capacity to manage your property and finances. Do you mind if we talk?" Loretta gestured toward the porch. "Not at all. I was just about to make coffee. You take cream?" Janine blinked, thrown off by the composure. Yes, thank you." For the next 45 minutes, Loretta answered every question calmly and precisely. She pulled out her LLC papers, tax filings, bank statements, and even the management contract with Savannah Coastal Properties. "Do you handle all your financial matters yourself?" Janine asked. "With assistance from my accountant and lawyer," Loretta said smoothly. "Their names and numbers are right here." Janine took notes, nodding slowly. "Everything seems perfectly in order," Loretta smiled. "I thought so, but you're welcome to verify." When the interview ended, Janine stood, visibly impressed. "Mrs. Sterling, I can assure you there's no cause for concern here. Frankly, it seems you're doing better than most people half your age." Loretta chuckled softly. "Don't tell my son that. He'd be heartbroken." As the social worker left, Loretta stood on the porch, watching the car disappear down the road. The moment it did, she let the mask drop. Not into tears, but into quiet, simmering fury. She picked up the phone again, this time calling a different number. "Malik Wade Investigations," a deep voice answered. "Malik," Loretta said, voice steady as stone. "It's Loretta Sterling. I need you to dig into my son's finances. Everything. Loans, accounts, credit lines, business filings. If he's trying to take my house, I want to know what he's hiding." "You got it," Malik said. "I'll treat it like family business," Loretta smiled. It stopped being that a long time ago. That night she poured herself a small glass of bourbon and stepped onto the balcony. The sea was dark and endless, waves glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her peace had been tested again. But this time, she wasn't shaken. No, this time, she was preparing for war. The report arrived on a humid Thursday morning, hand-delivered in a brown envelope with "Confidential" stamped across the front. Loretta had just finished watering her balcony plants when she heard the knock. "Morning, Mrs. Sterling," said Malik Wade, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. "You might want to sit down before reading this." Loretta smiled coolly. "I've been sitting through nonsense for weeks, Malik. I think I can handle the truth." He chuckled, handing her the file. "Fair enough. But this truth comes with receipts." When he left, Loretta carried the envelope to the porch, brewed herself a pot of sweet hibiscus tea, and opened it slowly. Inside was a dossier thick enough to make her heart thump once, hard. Page after page, bank statements, property liens, loan applications. And at the center of it all was her son, Darius Sterling. Each document peeled back another layer of betrayal. He'd taken out 3 high-interest loans, each using his expected inheritance as collateral. He'd transferred company funds into a joint account with Kenya labeled Sterling Legacy Ventures. He'd even drafted correspondence with 2 attorneys about gaining financial guardianship over her estate, conversations that had begun months before the beach house fiasco. Loretta sat back, her chest tight but her face calm. "So it was never about helping me," she whispered. "It was about getting control before I caught on." She turned the page and froze at one particular email chain. Darius had written, "Once Mom's under evaluation, we can manage everything legally. The LLC transfer will be invalid if I can prove diminished capacity." Loretta's hands trembled once, then went still. She folded the page neatly and placed it aside. There would be no tears, no shaking, no doubt, just focus. When she picked up the phone and called Aisha Carter, her voice was like tempered steel. "Aisha, it's Loretta. I've got documentation of financial manipulation, fraud, and attempted exploitation. I want full legal action, restraining order, asset protection, and a harassment claim if possible." Aisha didn't hesitate. "Send me the file. We'll start today." By the following afternoon, Loretta and her attorney sat in a glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Savannah. The late sunlight pooled across the mahogany table as Aisha flipped through the evidence, her professional mask slipping into visible disgust. "This is bad," she said quietly. "He's been planning to declare you unfit since your company sale. These signatures, he even met with a probate lawyer, twice." Loretta nodded. "I want it all exposed. Every ugly detail." Aisha looked up, a small spark of admiration in her eyes. "You sure you're ready for that?" "I've been ready since the day he told me I needed oversight." The next move was swift. Letters went out. Legal filings were prepared. Darius's financial partners were quietly informed that his collateral was fraudulent. 2 weeks later, Darius stormed into Aisha's office during a scheduled meeting, his tie crooked, sweat dampening his shirt. "You can't just destroy me, Ma," he shouted across the table. Loretta sat perfectly still, her expression serene. "No, son. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided control was more important than love." He slammed a hand against the desk. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I was under. You had millions, and you were sitting on it doing nothing." "Living, Darius," she interrupted. "That's what I was doing. Living. Something you could have learned if you weren't so busy planning my downfall." Aisha slid a document across the table. "For the record, Mr. Sterling, your mother has formally filed for a restraining order and civil injunction. You are not to contact or approach her, her property, or any associated management entity again." Darius looked stunned. "You're really cutting me off?" Loretta leaned forward, her voice quiet but full of gravity. "You decided to treat your mother like an obstacle instead of family. Everything that happens now is the consequence of that choice." His face went pale. "How did you even find out about your loans? The inheritance scheme? The conservatorship you were shopping for?" She cut in sharply. "Because I still have something you'll never have. Integrity and allies who don't owe me money." For the first time, Darius's bravado cracked. "I just wanted to protect you," he whispered weakly. Loretta's eyes softened for a moment, not out of sympathy, but grief. "If you'd wanted to protect me, you would have called to ask how I was, not how much I was worth." The silence that followed was long and heavy. Finally, Aisha said, "Mr. Sterling, I think we're done here." Darius hesitated as if searching for one last weapon, but all he found was the reflection of a woman who no longer feared him. He turned and walked out without another word. When the door closed, Aisha exhaled. "You okay?" Loretta smiled faintly. "Better than I've been in years." She gathered the documents, slid them into her bag, and stood. The setting sun washed the city in gold, bright, clean, unforgiving. As she stepped into the hallway, she whispered, "Reckoning complete." But deep down, she knew there was still one more step, the final conversation that would close this chapter for good, and she was ready for it. The day of reckoning came 6 months later. Clear skies, calm waves, and Loretta Sterling dressed in crisp white linen as if peace itself had chosen her wardrobe. She met Darius one last time in her attorney's office, though she'd already decided it would be their final conversation. He arrived looking worn and hollow-eyed, his confidence stripped away by months of legal defeat and public embarrassment. The man who once barked orders across her kitchen now hesitated at the threshold. "Mama," he began, voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to talk." Loretta nodded toward the chair across from her. "Then talk," he sat, fidgeting with his cufflinks. I made mistakes. I was under pressure. Kenya lost her job and the business. It's gone. I panicked. I thought if I could manage your property, maybe I could fix things." Loretta folded her hands. "By declaring your own mother unfit to handle her life?" Darius looked down. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," she said, her voice calm but devastating. "You researched conservatorship. You hired lawyers. You called government agencies on me. You turned family into a weapon." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Loretta leaned forward. "You want to know the ironic part? If you'd simply asked to use the beach house sometimes, or told me the truth about your finances, I would have helped you. I always helped you, but you couldn't wait for generosity. You wanted control." Darius's eyes filled with tears. "I can change, Mama. We can fix this." Loretta shook her head slowly. "No, we can't. Trust, once broken like this, doesn't mend. You showed me who you really are, and I believe you." She stood, gathering her purse. "And that $15,000 catering bill you authorized?" She added softly. "The company's pursuing you for payment. Since you claimed management authority, it's legally your responsibility now. I'm sure your lawyer can explain the exposure." He looked stunned, desperate. "You're just cutting me out of your life?" She turned to face him one last time. "You did that yourself." As she walked out, the sunlight spilling through the glass door caught in her hair. She didn't look back. 6 months later, the Parker family's eldest daughter was married, right there on Loretta's deck under an arch of white lilies and ocean breeze. The ceremony was intimate, beautiful, and full of joy. When the groom thanked Miss Sterling for hosting, she smiled, genuinely happy for the first time in years. The beach house had become everything she dreamed it would be, a sanctuary of peace, laughter, and genuine kindness. The rental bookings had grown into wedding events, family reunions, retreats. The business she built out of betrayal had become her legacy of freedom. One afternoon, a letter arrived, embossed, formal, written in Darius's handwriting but sent through his attorney. "I'm sorry. I lost myself. I just wanted to make you proud again. If you ever want to talk, I'll be waiting." Loretta read it twice, then handed it to Aisha. "Please respond," she said quietly, "that Mrs. Sterling has moved on with her life and wishes him well in his." Aisha nodded, understanding without question. Sometimes, when Loretta sat on her deck at sunrise, coffee in hand and the Atlantic stretched before her like liquid light, she felt a flicker of sadness for the son she'd lost, but mostly she felt gratitude for the life she'd saved, her own. Because family, she realized, isn't defined by blood or guilt or obligation. It's defined by love freely given, not demanded. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone else's worst impulses, even when that someone shares your last name. The waves rolled on, steady and endless, and Loretta smiled. She was free.